All right, now we're doing 10.2, the second section on trigonometry. This is solving right triangles. What is the sine of 30 degrees? Well, let's see. I guess at this point in time we would put that into our calculator. You didn't do side ratios or anything, yep. All right, sine 30. It is 1/2. Put it in your calculator, it comes out 0.5. What value alpha does sine alpha equal 1/2? Well, we just did it, 30 degrees. All right, moving on. Did I skip too far? I did. What is tan of 45? If we put that in our calculator, we get a 1. What alpha, what angle is the tan 1? Well, we just did it, so it's 45 degrees. All right, when the ratio of two sides in a right triangle is known, the measure of its acute angles can be determined. Finding the angle for a given value of the sine is called the inverse sine function. Not reciprocal. We did the reciprocals. The reciprocal of sine is cosecant. The inverse of sine is arcsine, or sine to the -1. That does not mean 1 over sine x. That does not mean that at all. I know it's very confusing. So I will try to use arcsine and inverse sine. This is red. Inverse sine. Okay, that's not called sine to the -1 or reciprocal or anything like that. That's red. Inverse sine. So it's arcsine of something or the inverse sine of something. An inverse is not the same as a reciprocal. Reciprocal is always 1 over the given term. The trig ratios sine and cosecant are reciprocals because the sine of theta is equal to 1 over the cosecant of theta. Okay, that's what I'm saying. This is not the same thing as reciprocal. This is inverse. Inverse means to undo the function. So, arcsine is the inverse of sine because arcsine of the sine of theta is theta. It's undoing what the sine does. Okay. So, if the sine of alpha is x, then the inverse sine of x is alpha. This is true of cosine and inverse cosine, tan and inverse tan. If the sine of 60 degrees is root 3 over 2, then the inverse sine of root 3 over 2 is 60 degrees. So for sine, cosine, tangent, those 6 basic trig functions, we're putting an angle measure inside of them and getting a ratio out. For our arcsines or inverse sines, we're putting in a inverse ratio just a ratio. It's a ratio of the sides, and you're getting back out the angle associated. Okay, so we have to be careful. This is really critical. All right, solving a triangle involves finding all of its sides and lengths, and side lengths and angle measures. Okay, so there'll be 6. You have 3 angles and 3 sides. You're going to have 6 values by the time you're done. In a right triangle, if 2 sides or 1 side and 1 acute angle are known, the remaining angles and measures can be found. If you are given 2 sides, you can use the Pythagorean to find the missing side. Given a side and an angle, you can use the trig and an angle. There we go. You can use the trig ratio of the angle to find the one other side. Then Pythagorean to find the third side. Okay. So let's see the in action. All right. If we have a triangle like ABC, notice we know a couple of things. I know one side length, two side lengths. It looks like that's all I know. Okay, so A is equal to 4, B is equal to 7. I know those are A and B because they're opposite those angles. All right, C, I find C using the Pythagorean theorem. So I have 7 squared plus 4 squared is C squared. 7 squared is 49. And 4 squared is 16. I have 49 plus 16. This is going to be 65. So C is the square root of 65. So the tangent of A, remember this is A, is opposite over hypotenuse. So that's opposite over hypotenuse. So my tan is 4/7. All right, now down here I'm looking for 6. I now know it's root 65. Now I have to find the other two angles. So if I know that the tan of A is 4/7, then I know that A is the inverse tan or arctan of 4/7. So I can put that into my calculator. Okay, inverse tan, you'll notice, is second tangent. Second tangent, 4 divides 7 is 29.7. Okay, so A is 29.7. Well, since I know the sum of all the angles is 180, and I know C is 90, that means A plus B has to equal 90. So I can find B by taking 90 minus A. Well, if A is 29.7, then 90 minus that number is 60.3. Always need to put a degree symbol on, so we know we're talking about degrees. Okay, so see, I have all 6 of my numbers. 3 were given, I can find the other 3. Okay, so now we're going to move on. All right, triangle review. Knowing these triangles will help you quickly determine the trigonometric values of 45 degrees, 30, and 60. You need to know these side ratios. It's important. And these are merely a side ratio. Another way to express these would be to say x, x, and root 2 times x. And this would be x, 2x, and x root 3. Okay, so the reason we look at this is if this is a 30-degree angle, if I'm given a 30-degree angle, and I'm told that the side opposite is 5, I know that the side adjacent is 5 root 3. I know the hypotenuse is 10. See, I can find all of them really fast if I know these side ratios. These also give me the sine, cosine, and tangent, and the reciprocals for 30, 45, and 60. These are very commonly used angles. All right, so for example, this is 45. If I know that this side ratio would be x, x, and x root 2, well, I know that 5 has to equal x root 2. So 5 over root 2 is x, which that's my two side lengths. So I know that A is, I'm going to rationalize this as I go, 5 root 2 over 2. as is B. All isosceles triangles are 45, 45, 90. I mean, all isosceles right triangles. Okay, A and B are equal because it's a 45-degree angle. I know a lot about this triangle. So I already know that. See, boom, I've got two sides. My angle A, well, it's going to be A is 90 minus the 45, so it's also a 45. See how simple that was? Okay, now we have another set. This is a 30. Okay, E is 90 minus 30, which is 60, which is that other angle in our set. I know that these are x root 3, and 2x. I know these ratios. Okay, so you need to have this memorized so you can get this out really fast. All right, so if I know that 8 is x, I know that E is 8 root 3 and G is 2 times 8 is 16. Boom. Done. See how fast and easy that is? Knowing those side ratios is very important. All right, so now we have, this is on your formula sheet, so you need to make sure you know what these are. Angle of elevation, it's above the horizontal. Angle of depression is below the horizontal. This is important to know this vocabulary. All right, Jeffrey is building a shed. Determine the length of each side of the roof. That's R. What's an isosceles triangle? But it's not an isosceles right triangle. So what we're looking at, since it's isosceles, if the overall width is 12, each of these little half triangles are 6 feet on this side. Okay, we know that this is 37.3. We need to find R. Well, I have my side adjacent. I need my hypotenuse. AH is cosine. So the cosine of 37.3 is equal to my adjacent side over my hypotenuse, which is R. Okay, so I multiply both sides by R, and then I divide both sides by the cosine of 37.3. And that's what R is. I put this in my calculator. 6 divide cosine 37.3. And I get 7.54. So that's my R, my length of my hypotenuse, and I'm done. It's that easy. Okay, there we are. Now we're done with this. Read your section 10.0. That's supposed to be 10.2. Read 10.2 and do 3 through 36 or 1 through 37, depending on whether you're regular or honors. And we're done.